Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie. How's it going?
Good. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
We are excited to have Julia Menez from Geobreeze Travel with us. Julia is a travel hacking coach, speaker, and founder of Geobreeze Travel. She has traveled to more than 30 countries before the age of 30, has saved thousands of dollars each year by travel hacking, and she's developed some really cool personalized travel hacking strategies for her coaching clients and hosts a Geobreeze Travel podcast where she interviews a really interesting and diverse roster of different kind of points and miles enthusiasts. And us, right, which is not gone. This will go live before that goes live, in case people are confused by that. We've done like one episode on credit cards and kind of from that angle, but we really didn't get into like travel hacking in detail. And there's so much here. And I'd say Mike is more of does it a lot more than I do. I'm more of like a novice kind of casual travel hacker. I don't even know if that can be a thing. That might be a oxymoron.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron.
But I'm super excited for a couple of reasons. One, I think this is an area where people can learn so much and do so much more. And two, I personally am excited to start traveling again in 2021, I hope. 2020 was a crazy kind of lesson and like making me even more so appreciate how much I love traveling. And I can't wait to get out again. And I want to do it for, I want to spend a lot less than I've spent on it historically. I'll put it that way. And so I think there's a lot I could personally learn from this too. So we're super excited to have you on, Julia. And why don't you I know I gave a bit of an intro, but I love to always kind of hear how people introduce themselves, right? Like tell us who Julia is.
Hey, Mike. Hi, Maggie. I'm so excited to be here. So who is Julia? Well, in my day job, I'm actually an actuary. So I don't do travel hacking coaching full time. And when I first got into travel hacking, I was looking into how do I get more points and more miles and started diving really deep into it. And then I eventually came across all of these articles that said, hey, if you want like the big points, you should get some business credit cards. And I didn't realize you can do that just with a Poshmark store or an Etsy store or something like that. So I thought I have to full on open a real business. So I opened a travel agency, which is how Geobreeze Travel even started, which wasn't fun. I didn't really like booking trips for people, especially because a lot of the different portals you have access to as a travel agent, those deals are not as good as just getting it for free with points and miles. But I eventually opened this business, and then obviously when the pandemic hit, my few clients turned into no clients because no one needed travel agents at that point anyway. So then I pivoted the business. And now I do a lot more travel hacking coaching. So I know people right now might be thinking, do I need to get points and miles credit cards because we're all just kind of sitting at home, not doing anything? But it's actually a really great time to start learning about the hobby if you're not already familiar with travel hacking. And then you can start banking up all of those points and miles. So whenever the world does open back up to a lot more travel, you can already get it for free with all of these points and miles rather than playing the roulette game of what these travel prices are going to look like when airlines and hotels suddenly need to recoup all of that lost revenue from 2020. So that's a little bit about how I started the business and why people should get into travel hacking, even though it still might seem like a weird time to even think about traveling in the future.
Yeah, Julia, that's really interesting. It's almost like the stock market in a way where you don't want to try to time it too much. It's always a good time to invest. And in this case, it's always a good time to start banking miles because at some point you'll be using them again. And there's some great opportunities there.
Absolutely. Some people thought, oh, this is going to be the end of travel hacking. Chase and American Express are going to close down the credit card offers. But they actually, in the last year, have ramped up so many different cool offers. We now have way more points back on grocery spend, which Chase didn't used to do. American Express has a lot of offers like for the first 6 months of 2021, you just get $30 in PayPal credits every month, which you can spend on pretty much anything. I've gotten just free gift cards to Best Buy, Dell, Home Depot, a lot of wine for free from American Express, because they're doing whatever they can to keep people on these cards rather than closing them down, because it's a very common conversation that their customer service agents are having these days of, hey, I opened this card so that I could travel. I'm not traveling. I would like to no longer pay this $550 annual fee. So American Express is doing whatever they can to keep their customers. And it has turned into some really lucrative opportunities for people who want to stay in the game or get into the game.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
So we have a lot to ask you about. But before we get into kind of travel hacking and the podcast and the knowledge you have, I think our listeners would enjoy hearing the practical results of travel hacking. So you just got back from the Bahamas.
I did.
We were following you on social media. It looked like an amazing trip.
I was following you by the hour, wishing I was not inside my house for the 9th month in a row.
I was on my couch watching your amazing trip. So can you tell us, how did you get there? Where did you stay? How much did you spend?
Yes. So there are a few different pieces to this. Originally, we had booked the Bahamas trip because supposedly you can get 4 free nights at the Atlantis Resort in the Bahamas if you are a Diamond member with Caesars, which there is a whole thing called the status match merry-go-round to get Diamond status at Caesars. Basically, back in the day, you could have status with almost any hotel, match that to Wyndham Diamond, and go from Wyndham Diamond to Caesars Diamond. Now, the easier way is going to go backwards, where you get Explorist or Globalist at Hyatt, match that to MGM Gold, and then match that to Caesars Diamond. So we can get into status matching, but there's all sorts of ways to get status at different hotels with just one status. But anyway, Caesars Diamond is supposed to give you 4 free nights at the Atlantis Resort in the Bahamas. And I said, oh, we need to do that. So I had booked flights a long time ago in order to get these 4 free nights. Well, right now, Atlantis is not actually honoring that for lower level Diamond, which is what you get with status matching. It would get you there with higher tier Diamond, which you have to gamble a lot to do, and I don't want to do that. So then we had these flights, which we got for pretty much free because I had been stalking JetBlue's social media and everything. And one day they had a sale where flights started at, I think, $29 one way. And we found some $60 flights to the Bahamas. And actually a really cool thing that you get with American Express is $200 of flight incidental fees with your Platinum card, which normally you spend on things like choosing your seat, checked baggage, on-flight food and beverage. But what some people don't know is you can actually book some flights that are less than $50 and then cancel those, get those credited back to your account, and then it's like you just have $50 gift cards from your American Express Platinum to apply. This is easiest to do on Southwest. All of the other airlines, you have to be a little bit more meticulous with reading the terms and conditions for how it works, but people can do this with Southwest. This hack still technically exists. Some people predict it'll go away soon, but I was able to just book a whole bunch of less than $50 JetBlue flights, cancel them, get them credited back to my account, apply them to our Bahamas tickets. And so between my Amex Platinum card and my Amex Gold card, that was $300 off of the flight. And then we used my husband's incidental credits to upgrade to the even more space seats. So because I'm 5'1", I could swing my legs all the way back and forth. It was basically a lay flat seat for me. And those were our flight hacks. So I don't remember what we ended up spending, but we had $300 off plus the upgraded seats. It was probably, I think we spent $120 total for 2 round trip tickets to the Bahamas. And we spent 0 points, which that's the catch with a lot of these things where people are like, oh, I only spent $45 on first class flights to Dubai or something. Yeah, but maybe it cost 195,000 points or something, which takes a while to bank up. So there are a lot of different travel hacks.
Yeah, like they wasted a mass, or not wasted, but they used a massive amount of points, which have a dollar value. And so that opportunity cost of you could have had 4 other trips needs to be weighed.
Correct. Some people really like to go for one life-changing trip every so often. Some people would rather sustain free economy flights for the entirety of their lives. And both are completely legitimate strategies. I've coached people who want to do both. But for the Bahamas, we didn't even have to spend any points. We just stocked JetBlue flights and knew a little bit about how to utilize the incidental credits to get a lot off that way. And then, so we had these flights booked, but no hotel, because I called the Atlantis and they were like, oh yeah, we're not doing the 4 free nights right now. So what we ended up doing was getting free nights at the Grand Hyatt Bahamas with our different Hyatt points, which we got through a World of Hyatt credit card. You can also get it through any of the Chase cards, because Chase Ultimate Rewards transfers over to Hyatt as long as you have a gateway card like a Chase Sapphire Preferred or Chase Sapphire Reserve. That hotel was 20,000 points per night for 3 nights. And the wonderful thing about Hyatt is free. So once you book a night with points, you don't have to pay resort fees, you don't have to pay parking fees, you don't have to pay taxes or credits or anything else like that. And that's pretty unique to Hyatt, because it's not that way with like Hilton or Marriott or some of the other hotel chains, where even if you're getting the room rate for free, you might still have to pay resort charges, especially at these nice Caribbean resorts or something like that. So our hotel was completely free that way. And through a lot of different status matching too, I'm currently at Hyatt Explorist status, which is the second best out of the 3 statuses they have. And all of this is part of a Hyatt status run that I'm working on right now, where hopefully by the end of February, if everything goes according to plan, I will have Globalist for the next 2 years, just by staying at Hyatt hotels for, I think it's 13 nights. And then you get top tier. That, in a nutshell, is how I got almost free flights and free hotels in the Bahamas. It's a little bit more complex than simply, oh, I'm going to apply for a Chase Sapphire Preferred and then I suddenly get to travel for free, because that's how a lot of blogs make it sound. But there's actually a lot more complex and deeper strategies that you can use to get these types of free flights and free hotels.
I just realized I am an amateur at this.
The whole time you were talking, Julia, I was like, Julia is like the PhD in travel hacking. And so I almost interrupted you in the middle just to give a disclaimer, but I'll give it now. I want to tell people, and I think you would say the same thing, Julia, and we'll get into this. If anything that you just said was overwhelming or intimidating to some people and kind of like, oh, I could never do that. That's, a lot. Recognize that, like, you're at level 10, right? You're a PhD in this. You're very well knowledge. It's why you coach on this to people, right? And so I think the point that I want to get into is like, we're going to kind of like take some steps back and get to the basics, right? By hearing about that Bahamas trip, which looked really fun. I think, you did some really sophisticated things to save additional amounts of money. There are a lot of like easier ways to get started where you kind of slowly build up to the amount of knowledge and kind of different hoops you're jumping through to get additional benefits and additional upgrades and other things.
Correct. I realized as I was explaining all that, I'm like, this is getting real deep, real fast. Because
no, but it's still helpful to hear.
I podcast too, so I completely understand the wanting sound bites of just get a Chase Sapphire Reserve. It'll solve all of your problems. And those are the types of sound bites that sell really well, or the types of headlines that sell really well for blogs is just get these 10 credit cards and it will solve all of your problems. You'll get to travel for free. And part of what we actually cover a lot in my Instagram and my podcast is it takes a lot more than that for these super hacks.
Yeah.
But to just get started, you really can get a free round trip to Europe and a free hotel night or a few free hotel nights just with 2 or 3 cards. And that's the type of stuff that I do coach people on.
Yeah, well, it's like you said in the beginning, there's all these different levels of it, right? There's people who might just want to take, one trip free a year and they're happy with that. And there's people who might never want to pay for travel again. And, so there's a lot of different ways you can approach it. Like with all things in life, the amount of time you're willing to put into it versus kind of what you want to get out of it. But so what I think would be helpful is let's kind of take a step back for people and like, help us define what travel hacking is and kind of just generally like what it is and how it works. Because some people don't even know the term travel hacking.
Yeah. So travel hacking is just the art of getting free travel using loyalty programs set by hotels, airlines, credit card companies to get those different loyalty points and miles that you can redeem for free travel later on down the road. There's a misconception that to get a lot of these points, you either have to fly a lot or sleep in hotels a lot or spend a lot on your credit cards, but that's actually not true. And there's different strategies in place so that you can optimize rather than maximize all of your effort.
And when did you get into this? Like, what is your origin story on travel hacking?
Yeah, so I originally heard about travel hacking by reading different fire blogs back in 2017. Probably Go Curry Cracker is where I had first heard about travel hacking. And I was fascinated, but also had a very similar reaction as many people on the internet who think this is a scam. And it has the word hacking and credit cards in the same description, so we should tread lightly. And so my husband and I applied for a couple of credit cards and thought, okay, this isn't too bad. Like, we have a few points now. We don't really know what to do with them. And we were about to go to Morocco. Well, 20 hours before we boarded our flight, our tour guide, who was handling our hotel, transportation, excursions, everything in Morocco, called and said he had a family emergency and had to cancel on us. He was also a one-man operation, so couldn't just transfer us to a business partner or anything. So he just refunded our money, and then we were out, hotels, excursions, and everything 20 hours before boarding that plane. So that was cool. And then I called American Express and said, hey, I have these points and no hotel. What do I do? And they were like, oh, yes, from the sign-up bonus with this one card, you have enough points to get 4 free nights at the Sheraton Casablanca. Would you like for us to book that for you? And I said, yes, please do that. And so then we got these free hotel nights and it felt magical. And also when we got to the Sheraton in Casablanca, they were like, oh, thank you for having elite status that comes automatically with this credit card. We would like to upgrade you to a club room where you have access to free breakfast. And we have snacks for you. They're free. We have French pastries for you. Those are free as well. Is there anything else we can do for you? And we were just treated like royalty. And at that point, I was very addicted and said, we need more cards. We need to just level this up exponentially. And that's how I started getting into business cards as well, where I thought, okay, the next step with this is business cards. I need to open a travel agency. That was not actually necessary, but here we are now.
That's so interesting. Just the how you kind of fell into it and got a taste of it through that experience. And also just, I think it's interesting because we were just talking about kind of me saying like you have a PhD in travel hacking. Well, you got that in 3 years, right? So I thought you were going to say I got into this 10 years ago. Like you've just the idea that you've been doing this for 3 years so you can learn a lot quickly, which I think is helpful for people to understand.
You definitely can learn a lot quickly. And the best way to do that is not by spending hours and hours reading through different blog posts and watching YouTube videos, but it's actually with connecting with other people in the travel hacking community, either by asking your questions in Facebook groups. I personally love recommending attending any points and miles meetups that you can find either in person when they open back up or virtual, going to some points and miles conferences because they do exist where you can get all of this next level information in a few hours rather than years where it took me. Some people level up much, much faster than I did.
So on that note, for someone who has not yet started travel hacking and or maybe they, have a credit card like a SkyMiles card, but they wouldn't necessarily consider themselves a travel hacker, what is your kind of getting started advice to them?
Make friends who do what it is that you want to do. And that applies for anything, travel hacking, investments, tax hacking, FIRE. Just start interacting with the community, asking your questions, but also thinking to yourself, what do you want to accomplish out of travel hacking? And is there a lifestyle that you want? Do you want that forever free economy, family of 4 type of travel? Do you want I want to travel once every year or once every couple of years on a first class flight? It's going to be very hard to say, I want both. It's one of those, you can afford anything, but not everything. For somebody to say, I want to be traveling first class with my whole family all the time, that's going to be hard. There's a lot of effort that goes into sustaining that type of lifestyle. But whatever type of lifestyle you want, just start trying to think about that. And then it's much easier to tailor your personalized travel hacking strategy towards those goals. Because somebody who has a family of 4 and just wants free Southwest flights domestically all year round is going to have a very different strategy versus somebody who says, I want to visit my family in China once a year and I would like to fly first class to do that.
That's really interesting. Your advice is similar to, I think, a lot of different areas, but especially FIRE as well. Like, find your purpose first and then figure out your path. And I think when it comes to FIRE and saving money and investing, people do it the opposite way. They start doing things very aggressively, but they haven't figured out what exactly they want to achieve.
Yeah. They're not sure on the end goal.
People do that all the time with travel hacking, where they think the starting point is, okay, so first I need a Chase Sapphire Preferred, and then I need a Southwest credit card, and then I need a hotel credit card, and then I need an Amex Platinum, and then let's see what I can do once I have all of those points. And if you're approaching the strategy that way, you are shooting in so many different directions, and then you have all of these pools of points that may or may not transfer to each other coherently. Where if you say, okay, I spent a whole bunch of effort getting all of these Southwest points and now I want to go to France. Well, Southwest doesn't go to France and they don't have any transfer partners that fly to France. So it's going to be so much more effective if you can work backwards and start with your end goal and then say, okay, this is where I want to travel to. What are the airlines and the hotels that even go there? How many points would I need in order to get a free flight or to get a few free hotel nights? What credit cards give me that currency of points, and what do I have to do to get that many points? Working backwards that way is so much more effective, and you can get a lot more free travel a lot faster that way.
So one of the things that you referenced in your introduction, and then you also touched on it in an answer just a bit ago, I think the travel hacking community is mostly about booking expensive trips for free and making it look easy. But then you use more points, as we touched on with your flight to Dubai example. But you can also use fewer points, stay longer, go on more trips. What is your personal kind of attitude and philosophy about luxury travel, once in a lifetime travel, versus using points for lots of travel and making it a lifestyle?
So previously, I used to be much more about the quantity of flights because I liked to take 4 international trips a year pre-pandemic. And also I am 5'1", so I don't need a lay flat seat. I can fall asleep very easily in economy. But now that we don't get to travel as often, I'm leaning towards trying to get more of that luxury every once in a while type of lifestyle, just because it's such a hassle now to go internationally. With the Bahamas, you have to get a health visa with COVID testing and everything beforehand. And now starting on January 26th, you have to get a visa to come back into the United States saying that you're testing negative. So I might lean more towards trying to get that occasional luxury trip more than the quantity trips going forward. Also, it's very different for people who just do this as a hobby versus people who write about it or post about it on the internet, because as we all know, Instagram is a highlight reel, and it just does better if you have photos of yourself in first class seats and lay flat seats. And I do want to touch on the fact that the people who are just trying to learn travel hacking, there is this pervasive thought of, I don't have first class seats in Singapore suites all the time, and so I'm just bad at this and I should stop trying. But it is like the top 1% of people who are actually traveling like that. And a lot of them are not traveling like that because they were points geniuses. If your blog is big enough, you have expensed trips, and the airlines and hotels will often just comp your stay or your flight in order to get more press about how good their offerings and their products are. So it's something that nobody talks about in Points and Miles. I think you mentioned most of the Points and Miles community is all about getting those luxury trips, making it look easy. But there's a lot that goes on in the Points and Miles world that no one really talks about. And that's what I'm trying to cover more with my podcast is people use Points and Miles to fly their families out of hurricanes. Or one lady used Points and Miles to go to the Philippines to adopt her son. And she's been travel hacking for 15 years. She's on Katie's Travel Tricks, and she's never flown first class because their lifestyle is all about sustaining economy flights forever. And so I think there is a huge disconnect between the perception of what travel hacking is and how people actually use this and what kind of people actually use this. I think at the beginning you guys mentioned, is travel hacking novice kind of an oxymoron? It seems like it, because no one talks about how to get started, like basic travel hacking redemptions, because it doesn't sell as well on Google. If you're just like, I saved $300 on a flight from like Ohio to Texas. Like nobody wants to read about that, but that's how most people are doing it. It's kind of like FIRE, where the things that make headlines are like, this person paid $300,000 worth of debt off in 2 years. And somebody else is like, I only paid off $9,000 worth of debt. I guess like Should I go into more debt so that my FIRE journey is more notable? No, like there's a huge difference between what makes headlines and what people actually do.
Now, I love you saying that on FIRE, because I think about that often. Mike and I have talked about it. I'm like, I don't have this like amazing story of how I've like paid off all this debt. I've just lived frugally my whole life. Like that's not super sexy to people, honestly. It's just the, it's the quiet way to get to things. But I also, Julia, love what you said about kind of the highlight reel, because what you're talking about within travel hacking, it's true within everything in life, right? When you look at social media, it's the highlight reel of someone's life. They're not talking about all the bad things that happened, all the tough parts of their life. I mean, some people are, but most people aren't. They're showing the beautiful, best parts of their life. And so I think that's important to remember on this, but in all uses of social media, right? Because people can kind of get down from social media if they can't contextually recognize what social media is and what it isn't, and how to use it in their life. So I just love your comment on that, because I think it is very true, and it reminds people. And I also really love and appreciate really how you're kind of normalizing travel hacking and having a much more like the average person approach to this, and that there's different flavors and kind of layers of it. On that note, I have a question that is just if you I know you don't have kids, but if you have any particular views on families with kids and like any kind of unique angles of like, is this harder to do with your kids? Is it, because I often think like when you're looking to get 2 flights, my husband and I do it a lot. Like when the 2 of us are traveling, it's easy for us to get 2 flights with miles, but like getting 5 flights with miles is really difficult, and often more than we have. And I'm just curious for your thoughts on kids as you layer that into the mix.
It's much harder to get those luxury flights for a number of reasons. Sometimes they just don't have the awardability. Sometimes flights will only say, hey, for every flight that we have on this route, we only open up 3 business class seats or something to even have points on. It doesn't matter how big your points bank is. So that's one thing that makes it a little bit challenging, is you might not be able to get 4 lay flat seats. Just for regular travel, obviously it takes a lot more points if you have, if you're travel hacking for 4 instead of 2. One of the things that makes this a lot easier is Southwest Companion Pass, where you can get buy one, get one free flights for up to 4 years or up to 2 years. And if both parents have that, then the kids can essentially fly for free. It's also worth noting that if it depends what metrics you're looking at, because if you're looking at how many like free nights you got per person or something like that, if you're a family of 4 with 2 small children and you're staying in one hotel room, the hotel costs don't scale with the number of people. You can still get one hotel room, and fitting 4 people into a hotel room costs just as much as 2 people in a hotel room. So that makes it a little bit easier as well. Something that I've also heard from my clients who have children is it is a lot easier to meet minimum spend on these credit cards if you have children. I'm like, okay, so I coach a lot of people who are just single, maybe fresh out of college, maybe in their mid-20s, but then also families. And all of the single people are saying, I don't know how I'm going to spend $3,000 in 3 months to get the 50,000 sign-up bonus, which is where most of the points are going to come from. And so there's all of these creative strategies about, well, ask your friends if there's anything that you can pay for them and just have them Venmo you back, anything like that. Whereas I ask the families, hey, do we want to go over creative strategies for meeting minimum spend? And they're like, no, that's just daycare and food. So we're good. So there's always a grass is greener on the other side, whether you're travel hacking for 1 or travel hacking for 2 or travel hacking for an entire family. And the strategies are a little bit different each time, but it's absolutely possible to travel hack with a family.
That's interesting. I think I'm not sure if you've done an episode on this, but I think a fun episode, and Mike talked about it a little bit in our credit card one, is starting to dig into like creative strategies for actually getting your kids credit cards and or like signing them up for different loyalty programs, start earning points. And I think there's an interesting angle there that like, we sign up our kids, like our kids have Delta SkyMiles accounts for when we bought flights for them that are abroad. But that's a slow way to earn points, right? So starting to think about, how can we think of the fact that we have 3 more people who could get sign-up bonuses or who could get, other sorts of features. I've not personally gotten into, but I think it would be interesting.
Well, just to clarify one thing, I was not signing my kids up for their own credit cards.
I know, yeah,
I was getting them accounts on mine so that I could then freeze their credit reports. What you just described, I'm pretty sure is credit card fraud. So let's not advertise this too much.
That's true. That's fair. I was more, I guess, saying there's loyalty programs that you can sign your kids up for.
Yeah,
and it's not like you get great sign up bonuses for that. But
so if the IRS is listening, don't worry. Nothing weird going on here.
Be exciting if we have someone from the IRS listening, though.
Would it?
Yeah, I think so. So we were talking about this earlier briefly, just in saying kind of around you normalizing travel hacking, kind of the way that you're talking about it. And I know one of your drivers in starting your podcast was to help spread the message and knowledge to people who aren't normally represented in the travel hacking space. You talk about that on social media a good bit. And so I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit more about that and like, what is the current kind of demographic, ethnic profile look like? Where are you wanting to take it in what's your kind of experience been really being a minority in this space when you're often, sitting next to a bunch of white males who are very popular in this space?
That was like 8 questions, Maggie.
I know.
Julia,
that was a lot rolled into one.
All that?
Feel free to take that wherever you'd like,
All
Julia.
right. The current demographics of Miles and Points users versus Miles and Points media is very different because Miles and Points media is mostly tall white guys. It is almost maybe some short white guys in there. It is.
I like how you say tall. I like how you added tall to my white guys reference.
They are almost exclusively white men in this space, maybe a couple of white women featured in there. And I think there's some Asian YouTubers who talk about points at Miles. And that's really it. And there's not nearly enough women talking about this because it's weird. And I think we cover this sometimes in the FIRE movement too, where women are often the ones who are taking care of home and just household budgets or anything like that. The ones looking for the deals and ways to save money, the ones who are planning out the family vacations. And yet they're not really represented at all in Miles and Points media with a few notable exceptions. And there's almost no people of color in this space, even though, again, just growing up, it's just ingrained with life of, oh, I'm going to negotiate for a lower price on this, or I'm going to look for a way to hack this thing. Like, fun story, when I was younger, my mom would walk into Macy's with Filipino food and trade it for secret coupons. And we have so much free stuff from Macy's. That's like next level Filipina mom hack. But yeah, she does that. And there are just so many different lifestyles in travel hacking that I want to represent on the podcast, because one lady immigrated from the Philippines and she didn't have any credit. And so there's a whole episode about authorized users and how you can use that to start building up your credit. And Mike, I think you mentioned you're doing that for your kids too, where by the time they're 18, if they're authorized users on your credit lines already, and your good credit just seeps into their credit report, by the time they're 18, they're great. And then they can get all of their own credit cards too without any hassle. And also just seeing other people who look like you talk about getting to travel for free begets the belief that you can do it too, which I can't imagine how many people have just like read Points and Miles blogs and felt like, this is really overwhelming. And people like me don't do this. I just don't think it's for me. And then they miss out on getting to travel for free back to anywhere in the world, just for family vacations, where they're like, oh, affording family vacations is not for our family. Or I would love to visit my family on the other side of the world again, but I can't afford it. And I don't think Points and Miles are for me because I grew up learning that credit cards were just bad. A lot of different cultures have a lot of different beliefs on credit cards. And I think it's so important to just normalize that across all different types of communities, which is why I really, really fight for more diversity in the Points and Miles space, so that it's not just like this one story of, if you are a tall white man who travels a lot for business and you want a lay flat seat on Emirates, you should read this blog and apply for these 10 credit cards, and then you're good to go, because there's so many more stories in travel hacking outside of just that.
I just had an epiphany. I think the reason that I got into both fire and travel hacking is because I am a tall white guy, and I apparently saw all other tall white guys doing this and thought, these are my people. I can do this very easily.
The way that I got into fire was because my husband, who is a average height white guy, heard about it from his coworkers and friends who are also varying degrees of height, white guys. And I'm like, okay, so like, how do we spread this to people who aren't just white guys? Because everyone should get to know about fire and travel hacking and all of this. And I think just representing more different voices through our podcast channels, our Instagram channels, like our blogs, anything, any types of channels that anyone listening to this has is so important, just to spread this message about how great financial independence is, how great responsible credit card practices are, how you can get rewarded with that with free travel and everything. So I think it's just so important to represent more people in this space.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, and I applaud you for you doing that. And I don't want to make light of it, but I do think it's really funny that somehow height is now one of the factors that we're talking about with, when we're joking about white men. Well, not joking, but talking about white men.
How tall are you, Mike?
6'1".
Tall.
I was going to say, I didn't know if people that'd be average or tall. Okay.
No, average is like 5'8", right?
5'10" for men.
For a guy,
5'10"?
yeah, 5'8's a little.
Okay.
No, I'm not knocking anyone who's 5'8". I think it's I like people of all heights, to be clear. I want to put that on the record.
How tall are you, Maggie?
I'm 5'6". I don't even, all of a sudden, I don't know how tall my husband is. He's of average height, I would say. He's not as tall as you, Mike.
Can you just get him in here?
I don't know where he is, but I don't know. It's sad I don't know his height. So one of the things that, just a really quick comment, one of the things that I love about something you just said a second ago, and then you also say it in your very first kind of travel hacking 101 podcast episode, is talking about the importance of like how people use credit cards, right? And that everything you're talking about, you give a very kind of important warning of like, look, I'm not telling you to put things you wouldn't typically buy on these credit cards, right? I'm just telling you how to use credit cards to your advantage, and not get into debt. And, I think that's so important. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what is your, in the same realm of that being one of your pieces of advice and kind of approaches financially, what is your broader approach to managing finances and kind of your philosophy on kind of how you manage your own personal finances outside of travel hacking?
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of content on the internet of I think it's like a zero-based budget where you allocate every single thing and you know where every dollar went. That is a lot of time, and I don't do that. I have reached a point in my finances that I hope most people aim for of, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just automate things, and then if there are rounding errors, that's okay, because you can just look at what's the net worth trend over the last few months. Like, is my budget in total, or my spending plan, is it close to target, or did I go over? And if it's way over, then I'll say, oh, we spent too much on restaurants or something. But I'm not spending hours each month going through and saying, okay, like I had budgeted $200 for restaurants. Oh, we spent $207. We need to reassess our life choices. That is not a good use of time. I spend a lot more time looking at high-level metrics and automating as much as I can so that I have more brain space left over for bigger game changer things like, do we have to change our investment strategy, or is there something that I can do to grow the business and the side gigs even more? Should I spend more brain power just like trying to get promoted in my day job or something? And those types of things matter so much more than did you go $7 over budget. And then if you spend hours thinking like, I went $7 over budget, I'm not going to reach fire, and then you just like get into a weird thought loop with that, I don't love that sometimes a lot of what I see on the debt-free community on Instagram is so focused on like tying everything out to the penny, when I'm like, you guys, just automate as much as you can, know what you're trying to go for, know what the big goals are, and just automate things so that they flow towards that goal, rather than kind of, we were talking about at the beginning, starting bottoms up and saying like, okay, I'm going to allocate this much money towards my grocery bill, this much towards shopping, and then I'm going to hate myself if I don't stick to that plan. Just instead say, all right, what's my high level financial goal? Did I make moves towards that? And are the moves enough to keep me on track with a high level project plan of my life?
Yeah, I think what you said is so interesting. And even for me, sometimes I will find myself in the same way that you're very passionate about travel hacking. I am very passionate right now. I've not always been, but about reducing my lifestyle cost. Just not even because I really need to, just because I find it interesting to live on less, to have more, to do things like travel. So it's kind of funny. Like at times I'll spend more time trying to like minimize the expenses, not your like $7 grocery example, but more of, what I'm spending money on and just not spending money on like clothes or other things. And less time on travel hacking. Right. And it's almost like, we often will talk about, kind of, you can't focus on everything. Right. So you got to kind of choose the things you're going to lean into. And that's why I think it's interesting to kind of understand what people are leaning into. Right. So I appreciate and really like your approach of saying, you lean more into travel hacking also because it's something you're passionate about. But you're not like, micromanaging, where every little dollar is going. And you've kind of gotten your lifestyle to the point where you don't need to.
Yeah, the money goals that I have right now, so my husband and I are work optional, we're FI. What I focus on more is how do I grow the side gig to be able to learn more about tax hacking and like being able to write off business expenses and being able to lower our taxes and do some kind of tax strategy that way. Because I find it interesting. And also I think it's going to be much more impactful to focus on like high level investment strategies and high level tax strategies and focusing my time there rather than, okay, how close did I get actual versus expected in my spending plan for the month? So that's where I am. If you are just getting out of debt or like working towards that, definitely go more micromanage style. But I think it's also important for people in the FIRE community to understand when to cross that threshold and not do the micromanaging of finances anymore and instead say, I'm in a safe space. What are the game changers for my life? Because I know a lot of FIRE people are like, it's never safe. Like I always have to be tracking things. And there's a point that I think is difficult for some people. I mean, the FIRE community to say like, I'm going to let go a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I often equate it to tracking your calories. If you've ever done that. So you do it at points in your life when you need to and when things might get out of hand. And like I had never tracked my expenses until a year plus ago when I met Mike, and I all of a sudden did. And I was like, whoa, what does it cost me to live for a year versus another family that, and so I find it more of kind of like an experiment for a while, but I feel you on like, it could get exhausting to do all the time. Mike, I think actually enjoys it. Like
I love this.
He's been doing it for like, I don't know how long. And he's always got goals of like reducing his expenses year over year. And like, it's fun. It's like a game. I don't know, game's the right word to you, but it's fun to you.
No, I think game is a good way to describe it. I get the same satisfaction from like, succeeding at this tracking thing that I do from succeeding in a game. But
I think that's what's so important is you get satisfaction out of it. Some people find it like debilitatingly, boring and just brings them down, which is kind of, Julia, I think what you were saying of like, you don't enjoy it. It's not where you enjoy putting your time. And so you shouldn't put your time there. Right. And I think that's why I always love the word personal finance, right? It's so personal and kind of, where you spend your time and energy.
But what she did say though, was that she is now at a point where it's not a good use of her time.
You're right.
And so Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point in your life, it probably was a good use of your time to track expenses a little more meticulously so that you could learn about things.
I'm very lucky in that. So I'm an actuary.
I was going to say the career field you went into. Yeah.
Actuaries are paid a lot. And also actuaries take a whole bunch of exams that it took 6 years of my life. It takes a varying amount for each person. And during those 6 years, like I was making my actuarial salary, but also expected to just study a lot. So I couldn't go out and I couldn't have high expenses just because it was more of a time constraint than a money restraint. So one day I was done with these exams and said, oh, I have a whole bunch of money. Like, what should I do with it? Which is not a common story. And it's also why I don't talk about like my personal finances too much on Instagram, because I personally think my story is not at all relatable to anybody at all, where they're like, oh, well, let's all just pass 6 or no, it's 8 actuarial exams, 10 now because they added even more, which is like not useful advice for anyone. It's much more useful to be like, hey, use Mint, use Credit Karma, use these things, where if I was like, how to be an actuary and have no problems with personal finance, like that doesn't resonate with anyone, which is why I talk more about travel hacking, because it's going to be, the stuff that I do with travel hacking is much more relatable and much more relevant to other people's lifestyle strategies of how to travel for not a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I think it's good that you recognize that. And I think we're often in a similar boat in the sense of, we've been very fortunate in terms of our careers and just things that we've, not that it wasn't also a, mix of hard work and everything else, but we've not had a lot of adversity thrown at us financially. I'll put it that way. And many people have, right? And many people started at different points, and and so I agree on kind of just what you focus talking about and kind of making it most relatable and relevant to people.
I think there's a lot of self-awareness involved of where are you in the FIRE journey, and like Mike mentioned, if you are in a place where you have to be micromanaging your finances or bad things are going to happen, do what you got to do, micromanage your finances. But also, as you eventually get to FIRE, know when you should let go a little bit, because I was reading some article about all of these 65-year-olds who definitely have enough to live off of for the rest of their lives, but they've just grown up with this culture of it will never be enough. And so they're still working and not enjoying their time with their grandchildren or whatever. And like at some point it's enough, and you have to know when it's enough, and you don't have to micromanage your finances anymore, and instead say what's actually important.
No, that's great. I think we'd all agree with that. So Julia, this has been amazing. And thank you for humbling me as I realized that I am not a PhD in travel hacking. I am like year 1 into my MBA of travel hacking, but this has been fascinating for everybody kind of listening. I think it'd be interesting to hear like what's next for your podcast and for you personally.
So for the podcast, we have so many cool stories lined up. I think most of February is going to be focused on 2-player mode. So we have, in the spirit of Valentine's Day and everything, a lot of fun proposal stories for how to hack like a $17,000 free trip to Bora Bora or fly around the world for only 125,000 miles, how to take advantage of referral bonuses. And then in the future months, we have a lot of interesting content as well of people who make careers out of this, and how do you turn your travel hacking hobby into a career? What are the different tools that you can use? Different spotlights on different areas in the United States that you can travel to, because all of us are traveling a lot more domestically these days. So those are some things that you can look forward to on the podcast at the Geobreeze Travel podcast. And for me personally, normally I would have an entire year of travel already planned out for myself, but we're taking it day by day. So if the world opened up, I have business class tickets to Spain in May that I'm probably going to have to move for like a second or third time. There was a sale on Iberia miles, and I really want to take those business class flights one of these days. Additionally, in my life, I host travel hacking meetups every month. So if you want to get in on that and hear even more cool stories from the travel hacking community about how they earn points and miles, how they use points and miles, and all of the different cool news headlines that are going on in the points world, you can find that at geobreezetravel.com/hangouts. And I'm always trying to come up with cool Instagram content, and that's probably the best place to find me is on Instagram at Geobreeze Travel.
Awesome. Can anyone join those hangouts? Because I've seen you post them, and then I'm intimidated because I'm like, well, I'm not a travel hacker. Like I shouldn't be in that hangout.
You should absolutely be in this hangout. So I try to aim for about half of the people being experts, and then half of the people being like, I just need to save time and I don't have time to read a whole bunch of blogs, which we're hitting that balance pretty well, where half the people are asking questions and half the people are answering questions.
Oh, I'm inspired to join your next meetup then, because I've seen you post about them. And
yes, we get that question a lot of, what if I go there and have nothing to contribute? Then just learn and ask your questions, and the value that you would get out of it is that it saves you so much time from having to do all of your own research, because you can just ask like 10 or 15 experts at a time and say, hey, I'm trying to hack this trip. I'm trying to get a whole bunch of Marriott points, trying to get a whole bunch of Hyatt points. What should I do? And people will say, oh, I did that once. Here's how I did it. Here's some different new promos that are going on that you should take advantage of. And it saves so much time for beginners to really level up their travel hacking super fast.
Yeah,
now, be careful what you wish for, because Maggie is sort of a talker. I'm not sure if you picked up on this. So don't worry about her.
In that room, I'll just sit quietly and listen. So Julia, we really appreciate you coming on. I know you just shared where people can find you on Instagram. We'll put all of that in the show notes for people, because you post a lot of great content on Instagram. And I think following people like you and others in the space, which you often make recommendations of other people that are great to follow in the space too, can be really inspiring and keep this like top of mind for people that, want to do more of this and want to travel more and also pay less when they do travel and get into travel hacking. So we really appreciate you coming on, and I've personally learned a lot today, and it is every time I talk to you or kind of see what you're up to on social, I definitely am more inspired to do more in this space, because we love to travel, and I arguably spend way too much on travel today because I just, out of not having a lot of time, I just book all my travel and like pay full price for things, and except for hotels. It's the one area where I always get nice deals working for a hotel company. But we appreciate you coming on, and I know I've learned a lot. And even when Mike's learned something, it's a huge feat because he seems to know everything about everything. So
thank you so much for having me on today. And as you mentioned, I absolutely love giving shout outs to other travel hackers and points and miles enthusiasts on Instagram. I think it's something that, again, doesn't happen nearly enough in the points and miles community, mostly because everyone's afraid that their audience will go to a different blog and use their affiliate links, which I think has been silly. And I think that this entire industry should be more collaborative. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I hope everybody comes and finds me on the podcast and Instagram and finds a whole bunch of other people as well that they can identify with who like to travel the world for free.
Well, Julia, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, Mike. Bye, Julia.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks everybody for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard today, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode.
If you have thoughts or questions, we would love to hear from you, and you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram or Facebook.